When last we left our intrepid adventurers, we were still fighting the giant artifact golem, yes. This is now session 3 of the fight with the artifact golem.
A random encounter.
I'm sure that John didn't just, roll on a table and like, oh, well, geez. I was expecting this to be a quick fetch quest, but, this thing showed up.
Oh, look, multi-part boss battle with with final form reveal.
Yeah.
Page 57 of the Monster Manual.
Yeah. It's in one of those little sidebar boxes. Anyway. So yeah,
I think this wasn't like as they went into the Duchess's parlor, like roll artifact golem.
We'll engage it in social combat. So basically, the first fight was a whole lot of the ground shaking and tossing us around, and the tentacles would come up.
The legs would come up, and then there would be 3 glowing spots, and then a living spell would appear,
right?
And there would be an explosion.
Yeah.
And they killed 4 legs, and then it revealed its true form.
Yeah.
And that was right at the end of the last session. A huge beast with 5 legs left and 4 destroyed came out of the black sand and started attacking them.
Yeah.
Made out of artifacts.
And it's very teleporty. So that was going to be a big problem because it teleports around a lot. There were still some living spells left over. And I think it spawned a new batch right at the beginning, but it was different from before. It wasn't the glowing spots. It just sort of threw some
doing
spells
that, but
there.
it did have an encounter ability where it made 3 new ones, one of each kind.
I was worried that it wasn't an encounter ability. I was worried it was going to do more of those.
I knew you wouldn't.
We were having a hard time.
That.
Yeah, we were having a hard time keeping those living spells because there were a lot of them on the board at one point. We had sort of let them go for a little bit and focused on those legs. Because we figured, the legs are causing these. Let's kill the root and then deal with whatever's left over. So this thing showed up. It made 3 more living spells.
And this time I got to aim them. Because the other times I did it randomly. But this time I just aimed them with 3 of its legs, and right next to, party members. Like one was next to Cricket, one was next to Serendipity, and one was next to it was next to Hank. Because then it shifted away, so Hank couldn't get him anymore.
Yeah. So, let me see. I'm trying to remember the early sequence of events.
Some of the earliest things that happened were like Hank or someone, Aurora maybe, tried to go up to it, and it had an ability where it like kind of went all like blurred motion and ran away 4 squares, which was technically by the rules as a teleport. I had him do a weird thing, but it's a teleport. So
anytime you moved adjacent to it, it could teleport 4 squares away from you. Very frustrating.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was I don't think they ever really had a chance to test this, but it was an immediate
reaction.
Yeah, actually, it was an immediate reaction to getting next to it, which is interesting because you can only do that once per round.
Yeah.
So if you get one guy whose turn is burned, then the next guy it can't do that. But they didn't. I don't know if they didn't clue into it or they just never thought of it or just never had a chance.
Would a charge attack be able to go off before the immediate reaction if the charge is all part of
no, because it's entering or moving into a square adjacent to it
so
was what's triggered it.
Okay.
But it's interesting, if you had enough movement to keep going 4 more squares, then you could complete the charge and hit it. And I think
Hank did that at one point.
Yeah,
he actually charged up to it, and then it teleported, and he says, well, I'll continue to charge. And he actually hit it. I remember early on it was a little bit chaotic. We didn't really have much of a strategy. And those living spells were messing us up because they were all over the place, and we were all over the place, and this thing we couldn't get next to very easily.
And there were 2 of them already left, so there were 5 on the board.
Yeah,
living spells.
The big boss monster, it almost got off the board. It was like it kept moving away.
They kept running towards it, and I'm like, well, I guess it goes this way.
Yeah, right.
It's great. Aurora got knocked down. She was prone. And she kept trying to get this thing to move away from was it Hank that it was pounding on or something? And so
Well, she wanted to get next to it because she had the black hole on, which means all enemies next to her are weakened.
Yes, that was what's happening.
And so she really likes being next to enemies, so she's crawling up to it and then
teleport away. And she preferred to interpret that as she was chasing it away. So as she's like crawling up to it, it's like
And she was crawling because she was sustaining 2 minors, and so she could only take one action.
That's right.
And
Serendipity was also sustaining a bunch.
I think somehow she finally got stood up, and then when she ran over to it, the thing is, when it does that teleport thing, it kicks sand in your face and knocks you prone. So she ended up being prone, and she was prone at the start, and so she didn't want to waste her action standing up, and so she was crawling towards it while she was focusing her mind sustaining these other things. And it was similar with Serendipity because it was such a long fight that she had a couple sustains going on. I think
she was sustaining those 2 balls.
Yeah, and she was using them. She could use them with her own actions, right? So almost every turn, she personally was just standing there, directing her balls around, and then I wasn't even. Anyway. I wasn't trying to do anything. It's just impossible not to.
Just referring to Serendipity's balls is enough.
We tried to use the word orbs, but that didn't help.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, she mostly was just directing them. I think she took only a couple actions, but of course it messed up.
Yeah, that thing.
Acid web, I think it was. Yeah. Corrosive web is what it was called.
So Cricket basically wound up being Serendipity, Van Gogh, Star More, Top Row, Tower, Shepherd's Soul, Stride Through Time's bodyguard in this fight. So we had the 2 ranged squishies over there, getting mobbed by living spells, and everyone else was focusing on the. This sort of gelled into our strategy. It was just how it was happening, but eventually we decided, okay, this is our strategy. This thing that we're doing right now, anyway. It's a strategy.
Sounds like Scrum planning.
Yeah. We're doing this.
Or dog training. Get that other dog behind.
Yeah. We're doing this, so let's plan to do this. And everything is going according to plan. So, everyone else was working on the big master artifact thing. And Serendipity, Van Gogh, Star More, Top Row, Tower, Shepherd's Soul, Stride Through Time, pulled out her what's the name of that spell that creates the illusion and sucks everything in?
Something about gold. It doesn't matter. But anyway, it's the spell that you make an illusion of what they want, and it magically makes them all go to it.
Right.
It's really awesome.
Yeah.
A huge area. All the enemies within it get sucked to the middle.
Right.
And then they get immobilized. Save ends.
Nice.
And even if they save out, Serendipity can go somewhere, or Top of the Tower, Shepherd's Stride Through Time, can re-pull in anyone that's in that area. So it's a great lock everything down thing.
Right.
And so she got 4 of the 5 living spells in this thing. I think we just killed the 5th one pretty early on. It was already wounded or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because there were 2 that were from before.
Yeah. And one was pretty wounded. So we killed that, and then the remaining 4 got sucked together. Oh, yes. Also fairly early on in the fight, I was sort of looking at the board, and I'm like, well, we've got this huge monster. We got these 5 living spells. Most of the Ood are dead. And we're really running out of our dailies and encounters here.
Right.
And some of us are getting pretty badly hurt. We may not be able to pull this off.
Right.
It's actually one of the most challenging combats I've had in a while. Most of the combats have just been a breeze lately.
Yeah. This one I was starting to think, we're not in a super bad spot right now, but there's still a lot to do.
Just because I threw 2 solos and 9 other enemies, some of which were above your level, in one combat.
Yeah.
I don't know why it was so hard.
So Cricket was thinking, okay, what if we can't do this? Well, we have to run.
Right.
We need the wizard powder D ingredients. So she ran over, ran over to one of the caravans that had been knocked over. and deployed the basement, the hatch with the extra-dimensional space, preparing to start shoveling these chests into there, because there's a lot. We can't just put it in a pocket and run.
Right.
But John had me do an Arcana check, and basically as soon as I started shifting one of these crates towards this extra-dimensional space, it started humming and vibrating and nasty sounding stuff. And we're like, maybe the Ood had a good reason for not transporting these things through, teleports and extra-dimensional spaces and stuff like that. As we were wondering, why don't they do that? Why do they have hearts?
Which was the, in some ways that was the main reason of it, was because I was like, well, I want them to have a caravan out of there. Well, I guess you can't use magic to transport it.
It's D&D. There's story logic reasons behind things, not just physics reasons. The physics is decided by the story logic. Yeah. And it's consistent. So later on, if it comes to it, we need to ruin everything. We can throw these things into an extra-dimensional space and see what happens. So after Cricket decided it would be best not to throw the unstable magical reagents into the thing, she ran over to Serendipity and Gold Sharp on top of her tower shepherds and started their time. And I think spent most of the combat next to her.
Just keeping her up?
She actually wasn't really attacked at any point. There were a couple of situations where, she'd pulled everything together into that zone, and she was hitting them with her balls. She had them trapped between her balls. But there was this one acid web one that had saved out of the immobilize, and it kept trying to come for her. And it was fast enough that it would get just out of the zone. And then Cricket would hit it with staggering note and shove it back into the zone. And this was like every round. It would get out of the zone, Cricket would shove it back into the zone, then Serendipity even would start on the top of the tower, time would pull it back into the center.
And that was a key combo, because without it, they could have got out of the zone. And that's why that spell isn't overpowered. And still, it took Cricket basically doing that every turn.
Yeah.
And Serendipity had to spend a standard to reuse it to so.
But in the meantime, Serendipity's balls were just devastating those things.
Yeah, they were hammering the spells, and the spells, well, one of the most powerful one was the one that never saved out. And then the other ones, I was playing the spells like they have no intelligence, so they just go to the nearest enemy. And that really sucked for them because she had this electricity ball, and anything next to it started to turn slow. And the nearest enemy to that was like that direction. So instead of trying to get away from the zone first, it would just go straight for the nearest enemy, which would just let it move 2 squares, and then it would just get sucked back in turn after turn after turn.
Yeah. So that side of the fight, it was important, but it was kind of dull, because we just kept those things locked down and then whittled them away until they were dead.
Well, until that happened, it was looking like you guys might be in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Until we realized that was our strategy. So the other 3 players, Croesus, Hank, and Aurora, they went after the main the main boss monster. And the trick with that, it was really annoying how anytime you got close to it, it teleported away.
Yeah.
But eventually, Croesus managed to teleport next to it, which didn't trigger its thing. And then he did that thing, Lodestone Lure, where the enemy can't move away. It has to stay adjacent to him. And I can't remember, did that teleporting get past that? Or there was something that was still somehow blocking it, even though it could teleport.
It could still teleport and ignore that ability, but it was still helpful because it wanted to get away from Aurora, and so what it was doing was just every time Aurora somehow got next to it, it would just shift away, and Aurora had gotten next to it somehow. I don't know how that happened. I wanted to shift it away, but I had trouble.
Yeah. It can't shift. It would have to teleport, and it only teleports when people come adjacent to it.
It can't teleport it. Well, it had an encounter teleport power, but it used that off the hop to get to a better place. So it couldn't teleport at well, and that was.
So the key was we had to make sure no one else became adjacent to it because that would trigger its teleport. So Hank couldn't approach it anymore. Hank had to hang back. Fortunately, he's got that ridiculous ranged melee thing that he does. And so he was able to hammer away at it without actually getting adjacent to it. Even though he's a melee guy. I think that's what he was doing, right? Yeah.
There's like an at-will on...
It's his sword and some kind of sword mage thing, but anyway, yeah, it's a sword, and basically you can use it at range 6, but it still counts as a melee attack. And and he was using his power attacks and all that stuff to hammer, and they were just wailing on it. I mean, it had tons and tons of hit points. It was a solo, so they spent a lot of time. But it wasn't as scary once the living spells got locked down, because it was just like, okay, we have breathing room, just hit this thing a whole bunch.
Yeah. I mean, Hank is a heavy hitter.
Yeah.
And he's laying into this thing. Croesus is also somewhat of a heavy hitter, but he's also a super tank. And he's adjacent to this thing, so he's absorbing its ability to do damage.
Right.
And Aurora had managed to get next to it with her weaken ability.
So it's doing half damage.
Yeah. Aurora, at one point near the end there, she actually got taken down to 0. But Cricket had Word of Life, which is an immediate interrupt. Interrupt? Reaction? Reaction. Yeah, it goes off. She gets 0, and I immediately give her a healing surge. It's a daily. But
pretty useful.
Yeah. But the really
It's
awesome...
the first time anyone's gone to 0 since like level 3.
The awesome thing...
Since I killed Aderon.
When an enemy hits an ally and takes him to 0 and that ability goes off, and I heal that person, the enemy also is at -5 on all defenses for the next round.
Oh.
So that was time for Hank to pull out all the power attacky type. I'll throw away all my 2-hit bonuses. And I don't know if you remember, at the end of last session, Cricket had made it fall asleep, and Hank had likewise pulled out all the big stops in a coup de grace. So it's taken a few really, really massive hits, in addition to the just generic wearing down from being in combat.
That reminds me of another thing that happened to... Who was it that stunned it? Oh, it was a crit. Someone critted it, and we rolled on our crit table, and they sacrificed their damage for stunned one round, because it was a really good roll on the crit table. And that happened to be the round.
Because Aurora got it in the groin.
Yes, and they kind of had one, because it was just a bunch of legs.
Yeah.
So, we just kind of imagined it tried to get her and just kind of impaled itself on her sword.
She used that card. She rolled a 1. She critically missed. But she had a special card. It was just a one-time use only thing, where if you roll a 1, it becomes a 20 instead.
The dumb luck.
Yeah. And so we were like, this thing charges at Aurora, and rawr, and she like, and it impales its groin on her sword.
And so it was stunned for one round.
That's so appropriate to the card, too.
Yes,
fantastic.
That's great.
And that was the round that it got bloodied, and it had an ability that on bloodied it recharges and immediately uses, and it was an immediate action, and you can't take actions when you're stunned, and so it lost it. It didn't get to do it.
Yeah, that was a good thing. There were like 2 surviving Oog that were hanging around in the fight, just off in the periphery. Neither of them got killed. And there was one that ran away last session, so three Oog in total survived. And I was actually starting to think, maybe it would be better for the party if we arranged for them to die. Because then we'd have all that Wizard Power D stuff to ourselves. We could take a look inside the box, find out what it is, and then after the apocalypse, we'll be able to
Make Wizard Power D.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, with just knowing the ingredients is only half the battle, but it's an important battle. What's in the box?
I was tormenting them because I was like, oh, don't worry, you don't have to open it. I mean, you'll find out after the campaign's over what was in there. I kind of expect them not to open it. I mean, why would they? They said they wouldn't open it.
It's a box! We've been told not to look.
That is all the reason you need to open that thing.
And also the ice has been broken in terms of box opening.
It's true. The hubris of player characters. Well, I'm clearly the hero, so I should look into this.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I don't know if we'll look in the box or not. I just find it super amusing.
Since some of the ooze survived, I think you'll have a much harder time.
Yeah, no, I don't think we will.
So, yeah, what happened then? We've been speculating here.
So, we finally managed to kill the beast. It took a long time.
They hammered on it. Finally,
Did the beast go down or the spells go down first?
The spells went down
first.
Serendipity and Ghost Miller, top of Tower Shepherd, still strides through time. Finally killed the last living spell. And so she had her turn. So she went pew pew with 2 magic missiles. And the beast exploded into a huge explosion of magic items. They knew that it was like this health bar was flashing red.
Super duper.
It was had explosions going off and whatever. But yeah,
he did for like a round already. He'd been talking about how this thing is just hanging on by a thread.
And so like Hank and Grosses were like, "Oh, good job, Serendipity." But
yeah. So basically, you just need to magic missile the thing, and it goes down.
Yeah.
Everyone was all like, "Oh, it's got no weaknesses." Nope, turns out weakness is magic missile. And I seem to recall, I can't remember if it was just in my head or not, but Cricket was like playing up Serendipity, like, excellent, you dealt with everything. Good show, man. You killed the living spells and then you came and finished off as if she needs any more reason to have an inflated ego.
That was strangely satisfying.
It's raining magic items now. Huh.
Oh, today we were fighting this thing made of all these items, and I had this moment. I was crawling and it was running away from me, and I just felt so, I don't know, powerful. I was keeping it away from my friends. I was able to protect them, but then they came and it started attacking them, and I didn't know how I could help. But I stood up and it almost killed me. I had this moment where I felt like I was gonna fall, and all I could see was like this vision of this poultry, this bird, this like farm animal. I was like, why am I seeing a goose right now? This makes no sense. I don't understand. I saw across the dune, the black on this other dune, there was Cricket, and she looked, I think my color just changed, hurt a lot more. And then, thankfully, Serendipity and Goldstrider, Malor, Toppler of Towers, Shepherd of Souls, Strider through time came and saved us all. Whew, I'm so glad she's here. Who knows what would have happened and Hank and I if she hadn't come to save the day.
It's kind of funny. It feels like it's been 2 months since my last log entry, but it's really only been a couple minutes. I must have hit my head harder than I thought. Ugh. Aye.